It's time for the Kim Hammer Show, where you'll learn how your state government affects you, your family, and community. Here's Kim Hammer.
Good Saturday afternoon. Hope you're having a great day, a great weekend. We got a full show today with Representative Julie Mayberry, who is accompanied by her campaign manager, Katie, who's here with her today. So we're glad to have you ladies in studio today. And then on the second half of the show, we're going to have Jennifer Lancaster and her two daughters in. And she's going to be talking about the Constitutional Camp. They had it last year for the first time, and they're going to be bringing it back this summer. Already booking up, so I wanted to make sure you got some information on that, and you can get signed up for the Constitutional Camp. That'll be coming up this summer. It's a great camp. It's a great way to teach your kids about the Constitution and also to just get them better educated about state and federal government, which we need a younger generation coming up knowledgeable of that, Julie. We need them to be aware of what's going on, get involved, and I know that your family's involved, has been for a long time, and so appreciate that a lot. But
we bring our children everywhere, and they've learned so much just by watching.
yes, yep, they've been on the campaign trail with you ever since I remember, anyway.
In my belly many times
Yeah.
on the campaign trail. Yes,
wow,
yes.
yeah.
So
They come out with a
there's-
sticker on them. Vote for
yes,
Julie.
they did.
Okay, all right. Checking it out.
Actually, one of our favorite memories is my daughter Zoe out on the campaign trail would always say, "Vote Dada, vote Dada." That's all she could say, but she said it, and she was mighty powerful with it.
And she got the job done.
She did. Katie had a different response. Katie would go up to people and
say, "Will you vote for my daddy?"
Oh yeah.
And
how
then-
could you say no to that?
And then
Yeah,
after
yeah.
they would say yes, I would look at my dad and say, "Got another one, Dad."
There you go. Put the
Different
charm on.
campaign approaches,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, put the charm on. How can you say no, right? So, all right, let's talk about Julie Mayberry, state representative, because sometimes people get you confused with Andy Mayberry, although I don't know how they do that. But so who was in the legislature first? You or Andy? I'm trying to
It
remember.
was Andy.
It was Andy.
He
Okay.
served 2 terms,
Mhm.
and then he ran for lieutenant governor. So
That's
we
right.
had an open seat, and he convinced me to run.
Okay.
I didn't see that in my future, and he said, "You can do this," and kept saying, "Yes, you can do this. Yes, you can do this," and finally convinced me, "Okay, I will," because we had a lot of issues we still wanted to bring forth.
Mhm.
And he said, "You can do that." So anyway, I ran, and I served the 1 term, and then he came back in after me.
Mhm.
And then we switched again. And so now I served 2 terms after him. So total, he has served 3, and I'm in my 3rd term.
In
But
third.
we've kind of broken it up and
Okay. So you 3 for 3.
3 for 3.
3 for 3.
Yes.
All right, let's talk about, first of all, geographical boundaries of the district, because with redistricting, your district has changed from what it was. So what was it and what is it?
It was mostly a Saline County district. So Bryant, Shannon Hills, all the way through Sardis and Easton, and then included a little portion of Pulaski County, the landmark area. But with redistricting, it now includes in Saline County, Easton, Sardis, a little bit of Bauxite, but all of Grant County. So Ken Bragg, who is the
Mhm.
current state rep, decided not to run again. So it left an open seat. So they were trying to figure out how they can make it work. And that does include all of the Sheridan School District, and thought that might be a good route to go. We are in the Sheridan School District. My husband graduated from Sheridan.
Works for Sheridan.
Works for Sheridan School District now, and it only made sense.
Mhm.
So we're looking forward to serving all of the Sheridan School District and Poen. Poen is also included in there because
Very
it's all
good.
of Grant County.
Yeah, one of the it's one of the benefits, but also one of the adjustments to living in the fastest growing area of the state of Arkansas is with all the growth coming in, as far as what it did to our area, Saline County, Grant County, those counties that touch that, it kind of compressed us. And in some ways, kind of like a balloon, you push on one side, it pushes out on the other side. So it pushed out. And Grant County is a great county, man.
It is.
I mean, those
It
people
is.
down there are great. Not that I pastor a church in Grant County, I have that feeling, but they're great in Grant County. So good folks down there. Let's talk about legislation that you have run in the past, and then let's talk about legislation that I know you're working on, because I'm at the Capitol. I see these ISPs coming through. So what about legislation that you have passed?
Well, probably the most known would be No Patient Left Alone, Act 311 of 2021. And Kim, as you know, you were on that bill. You know the impact, especially as a pastor of a church, trying to even get into a hospital or a nursing home during the pandemic. You weren't even allowed in as a pastor. Families weren't allowed in to see their loved one. When you don't feel well, you need to have someone there with you to be your advocate. You need someone to tell them what's wrong, what's your past medical history, what are you allergic to, and be a part of that care plan. And during the pandemic, family members, loved ones were kept out of the hospital. And I know that people died from isolation. I know specifically someone who told me that their loved one in a nursing home who was on dialysis decided to forego dialysis because they didn't want to live in a world where they were so isolated anymore. So COVID did take some lives, but I believe isolation ended a lot of lives too. And so that's why it was so important to have this act. We were the first state to pass it. And since then, there's been about a dozen other states that have some version of it. I believe that we still have probably the one that provides the most amount of visitation compared to some other states that have passed laws. Some other states have tried and have failed. There was about 19 that either are still out there or have tried and have failed. So what we've accomplished here is a huge step. Have we solved all the problems? Is there still some potential isolation, people in certain situations that haven't been able to have a loved one? Absolutely. I believe in 2023 we can add some clarity to that law and tweak it some. As you know, we do all the time. We see how far we can take it and see what we can do and figure out what worked and didn't work. The enforcement part of it is the part that I'd like to work on some and moving into 2023. So there's still a little bit more work to do. The other bill in this past session was to make sure that, and you were my co-sponsor on the bill, was to make sure that businesses and individuals that received the PPP, the federal loans that were forgiven, that they did not get state income tax on that.
Charged against them.
Yes, charged against them, that they didn't have to pay that. And started working on that a year before the session. I think it was in May of 2020 when we were filling out our own paperwork as a small business, realizing, oh, wow, this is going to count as income and we're going to, and that's not right. You're giving us money to help us get through this crisis. You've shut down many of these businesses. You're not allowing the people to work. You're going to give them some help, but then the next year you're going to charge them back the money? So we worked on that, and it was a group effort. Les Eves actually brought forward the bill that we ended up going for, but that was a huge accomplishment in this past session, too.
You hit on something about starting to work on bills. I mean, in the legislature, you're pretty much always working on something because the
Always.
landscape is always changing, or you run a piece of legislation and you see there's some unintended consequences, or maybe another state comes in and takes like what you've done and they improve it. And then you look and say, okay, and it's always a constantly fluid moving game of making sure that we're always working toward the best product at the time that we're there. So what are you working on for the future?
I was going to say, you can see just a small stack of bills that I'm currently working on. You know, I'm pro-life. We have passed 47 bills since 2011 that are pro-life bills. I don't know if we can pass too much more that's considered a pro-life bill. We passed the strictest one in the nation. You can't have an abortion. It's obviously held up in our court system.
The trigger bill.
Right. But however, I think we need to start turning our focus to what happens when Roe v. Wade is overturned. And I believe we continue to pray about that, and I believe it's going to happen. But if that happens, and when that happens, there will be 3,000 more babies in the U.S., in Arkansas, born each year that might be born into a home with a mom or dad that didn't really want them. And what are we going to do to help those new moms, to help those babies? So I think that we need to work on adoption. I think we need to work on our foster care program. But just this past week, I met with some female legislators to work on a program that actually would help new moms when they get home from the hospital. Our state health department has a few different programs, and one of them is called Follow Baby Back Home. And I really am touched by this one because it really hits home with children who are born with special medical needs. and need a little bit more attention when they get home. As you can see, Katie has spina bifida, and that's quite a diagnosis when you find out that your child's going to have disabilities. Where do you go? It's very confusing. All these medical terms, and those families need support. And I think that that's something we need to work on. Right now, about 70 to 90% of babies that are prenatally diagnosed with a birth defect are aborted. And if we have these laws in place where you cannot have an abortion, we will have more children born with special needs. And we need to be doing what we can to take care of them. So that also follows along with the developmental disability waiver waiting list. We just appropriated $37 million to help people with developmental disabilities. And that's wonderful, but we need to make sure that that $37 million is being used in the most appropriate way that provides as much as we can to the person who needs it most, our most vulnerable population. So we're looking at one of the big issues, as you know, because you've been there in those committee meetings, it's trying to find workers. We will have a direct care worker shortage with this. So we need to do things to incentivize people to become direct care workers. First of all, increasing some wages, but also we're looking at a high school program out of Ohio that would train high schoolers in their senior year to be direct care workers. And that would put more people into the workforce right away. And the beauty of that program is not only does it help the person with a developmental disability, but in Ohio, they targeted students who were likely to drop out. And because of that program, they didn't drop out of school because they felt like they were useful.
Right,
They
the
felt like
calling.
there's a purpose in their life, and they were helping someone else, and they completed school and then had work afterwards. So there's some issues that we're working through to make sure that we can get that program, but that's one of the things. We also want to make use of technology to help people with disabilities live more independently. I think you were there when we were showing the video in the meeting. And we have people in Tennessee who have been using this technology who used to have 24-hour care. And now they're living independently in their own home, being monitored by cameras or other alarms. And when they need help, they can get help, but someone is not there with them 24 hours a day. And they're loving it because they have now a lot more independence. And isn't that what we want? We want people to have independence.
Well, and when you've got and I was in that committee meeting, you were chairing it, if I remember right.
Yes.
And, with a shrinking workforce, we've got to be creative in the way that we still meet the needs, because the needs are always going to be there, but not necessarily the workforce, either because we don't have it, or you don't really want to put the wrong person in the home either.
No.
And if we get down to the point where you're putting the wrong people in the home, you got bigger problems. So
do.
whatever we can do to expand that platform to be able to give people the ability to live independently, that should be our goal. But go ahead.
Right. Well, one of the other things that I'm working on, I do have an ISP that'll go before state agencies in probably August or September, and it is to look at remote work. Our state was kind of thrown into this pandemic, and we sent state employees home to work. And I think we know now that there are some jobs that work well from home and some jobs that don't, and some people who don't work well from home. But
And some people who do.
those people who can work from home, I think it's a great advantage for them. It will save them gas and time and money to be able to work from home, give them a lot more flexibility if they can still accomplish. And I've heard from many people that they are far more productive at home than they are in the workplace. So you might actually improve your productivity. And then the state can save lots of money by less offices and less lease space. It's almost like giving an employee a raise without having to give them a raise, because now they don't have that same level of
Transportation
needs, right? I also believe that it's great for rural areas like Grant County, like even Saline County. You don't have to travel to work. So you could potentially have this great state job and live in Leola, Arkansas, because that's where family was and that's where you wanted to be.
You mentioned Poe a while ago. We've got a family member just yesterday was having the conversation. She drives in to the Department of Ed every day, 60 mile.
Yeah.
And, what that could do as far as reduction of congestion, just the efficiency of travel time, the cost of wear and tear on the car would be great. And one thing that's kind of a sidebar to that, because we've had the meetings in the last couple of weeks, is now it's going to be made possible because of the broadband extension, especially if you're in rural Arkansas. There are a lot of providers out there, but I know the co-ops have really been making a push to get the service out there, and the service is good. So the combination of all these things coming together the next 2 to 5 years could just totally change the landscape of the way business is done here in Arkansas.
Exactly. It wasn't possible
Two,
a few
3
years
ago.
ago.
Yeah.
But the addition of broadband, and if you travel around Grant County, Saline County, you can see all the little markings,
Mhm.
the little flags. They're getting ready to lay all this, and it's going to happen. Thank goodness.
Yep.
But it is definitely going to make a difference in the way people work and what they're able to do from smaller communities.
Okay. I got about 10 minutes left. What else you got on the list?
Okay, well, the other things I have on the list is a farming tax credit. So this was a bill that actually came to Revenue and Tax last time. It was a Farm Bureau kind of initiated bill. Some other states around the country are doing this and have had great success. And we weren't able to vote on the bill. But I think if we were, it would have passed. It's a great bill, and I want to make sure that we see it to fruition. There were a few tweaks to it, and I've made those tweaks. But essentially, half of our farmers are over age 55.
Mhm.
That's concerning.
Well, it's like if you're not in the family line to get the family farm, and the other thing is, if you do get the family farm, do you want to stay in farming?
Right.
And just the future of farming as far as the cost. I know a lot of foreign countries and even, billionaires are buying up our farmland.
Mhm.
It's a game changer. Anything, and I don't know if your bill addresses keeping the small farmer in business, but that's what I'd be interested. Make sure the small farmer can stay in business.
Well, this is to actually create new farmers. So
Okay.
a beginning farmer. So as you were saying, if you're not in the lineage of, this is what your family's always done, it's really hard to get started.
Hmm.
So if you are a beginning farmer and you can find someone who perhaps has been farming, has agricultural assets, that might be land, that might be equipment, whatever it is, and they want to lease it to you, rent it to you, sell it to you, that person with the agricultural assets would get a tax credit, and you would get a tax credit. And you would also be entered into a financial planning workshop to make sure that, just because you know how to farm doesn't necessarily mean that you know all the finances that go with it.
Well, and you look at the cost of fertilizers this year, the diesel, the inflation, what it's done to the purchase of equipment. If you don't know finances, you probably don't need to be in farming because you're not going to last very long.
Right. So this adds that in there too. That's a requirement of it. So I think that gives a little bit more security to knowing that we're giving this tax credit and it's going to really help that beginning farmer get started. So that's definitely a bill. I have talked to Farm Bureau about it, and I think they're still very interested in helping to see that through. So I definitely am working on that one. We talked about new moms, work from home, and then the developmental disabilities waiting list. The other thing, there's a group of legislators who have been working on mental health issues.
Mhm.
Mental health has always been a problem, but I believe COVID has made it even worse. And our phones, our social media has really impacted our world. And we need to start looking at ways we can help people with their mental health. I was talking to a friend who does seminars on mental health first aid. I passed a bill back in 2019 that was to make sure that students in high school learn how to use a tourniquet properly.
Right.
Okay, stop the bleed, to make
Mhm.
sure that all students are given that, to make sure we already know that they're given CPR lessons. That's all great. That's to help the person in that crisis. You're not the doctor, but you're doing what you can to make sure that that person stays alive until they can get other help. So why are we not doing that same thing, training people on mental health first aid? What do you do when you know that someone is thinking about suicide? What do you do when they're thinking about harming someone else? Those are all real issues, and especially in our school system. And so we're looking at how we can improve and increase the number of mental health counselors in our schools. The big problem with that is that there's, again, a workforce issue. There's not enough people in that field, even if we had all the money in the world to get enough counselors on the campus, mental health professionals. But what can we do to equip our faculty to know what to do until we can get that person greater help?
Sure. And I've been if you're talking about Deanne Vaught,
Deanne's.
she's kind of spearheading that on the House side, and I've sat in all those meetings. We got the work groups broke out, or she does, as far as people picking their various areas. The one thing, having worked in mental health before, one of the things I always want to caution about is sometimes I think that there can be a bandwagon that people want to jump on as far as this is the latest, greatest. And I think one thing we've got to be careful of when we come into the area of mental health, and I'm not denying that people don't need mental health services and supports at all, and we could probably avoid a lot of issues. I'd kind of like to go back to the deeper root, though, of why are we having to have all this extra additional support thrown in there? And I won't, we got about 3 or 4 minutes left. I'm going to take 30 seconds of your time to just say this. Being in church doesn't take away all your problems at all, and it doesn't solve all your issues. And you can be in church and have mental health issues too. I get it. That it is what it is. But at the same time, I've also found I think people that have survived the best through the COVID situation are those that have a strong faith base to draw on, and that gives you the hope that the world and everything the world offers cannot give you. So when we have that discussion, and I'm going to have a show on mental health here in a few weeks, but I just want to make sure that we expand it and we look at all areas, because otherwise we're just putting a Band-Aid on a problem, and a lot of people are going to jump on the bandwagon, and the people that may really have mental health issues may be overshadowed by those that don't have the deep mental health issues. Maybe they need encouragement, a little counseling, but I think we got to kind of watch that as we go forward. But
Well, Katie and I, one change that we have enjoyed from the pandemic, Katie has spent a lot of time in the hospital, 80 consecutive days in the hospital in 2020, and a
you
lot
should
of
have got
other.
a nursing degree or something out of
That's
that
why
deal.
she hangs out with
Yeah.
her mom so much, because right now, temporarily, she just can't be left at home alone because we're having some medical issues. But what do we do on Sundays when we're in the hospital that we couldn't do pre-pandemic?
We watched, our church has a live stream service
Yeah.
on YouTube and Facebook too, I think. But we watch it on YouTube.
That we used to not, well,
Right.
maybe
Used
could
to
or
not,
couldn't, but
yeah.
you didn't have the internet service capacity. You couldn't do it. So,
Right.
And it has made a huge difference. You know, again, we were consecutively 80 days in the hospital during that pandemic, and we watched every Sunday. And I think if I had gone that long without having that connection, that's a long time to be in the hospital, a long time to be dealing with really complex medical issues, and that really, really helped. So,
just that network, that group that can help you,
yes.
can sustain you through very difficult times, and having that connection point. So, all right, I got 2 minutes. What do you want to say to the world, and especially to your new district in 2 minutes?
Well, I hope that they will vote for me. I have a lot that I'm already working on. You can't just kind of come in January and get things going. You don't even know the people. You don't even know how to file a bill. And these are things we're already working on. We've already got the connections, and I want to continue to work for the people in the great state of Arkansas.
Very good. All right. So Julie Mayberry running for what district? What's your new district?
District 92.
92. That's the hardest thing I got to get used to. For the last several years, I've had that district number of mine, and I got to rethink what it is. So your District 92 takes in East End, a little bit of Bauxite, Shannon Hills.
Well, not Shannon Hills, Sardis.
Sardis, and then all of Grant County. Very good. Katie, anything you want to say?
Not that I can think of. Hi.
Hi.
Wave.
Yeah, wave. Well, we were glad that you got out with Mom today. I mean, and she has. Your kids always have been a big support to you, and Andy has too. So, all right.
They have been there from the beginning, and it's great. I love that I live so close to Little Rock, because during the session I come home.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my dose of reality.
Yep.
We're sitting around the dinner table. I'm hearing my kids talk about stuff that's happening that day in school.
Mm-hmm.
And real life. I'm in the grocery store talking to people about things that are happening right now and right then and getting that feedback. And very, very grateful that I do live so close to the Capitol.
Real world experience.
Real
All right,
world.
so I've got to take a break. You're listening to the Kim Hammer Show. If you want to go up to thekimhammershow.com, you can pick up this site or pick up this interview again on the Facebook page up there. And if you are watching on Facebook, thank you for joining us today. You're going to see a little activity while we switch out, because next I got Jennifer Lancaster. She's coming in with her girls, and we are going to talk about Constitutional Camp, something that I think you want to hear, especially if you've got kids or grandkids. It's a great program that's going to be offered to you this summer. All right, come back after the break to the Kim Hammer Show. Welcome back to the Kim Hammer Show here on 101.1 FM The Answer. Previously, you were listening to Representative Julie Mayberry, who's running for her seat down there that takes in Bauxite, Sardis, East End, and now all of Grant County. So you can follow her. And now we're going to transition into talking about Constitutional Camp. I've got Jennifer Lancaster in studio live with her two beautiful daughters, Victoria and Gia. I got that correct? All right. Good morning. How are you girls? We're good. We're good. Glad to see you came and helped cheer Mom on. I tell you, if you listen on the radio and you're not watching on Facebook, you're missing a beautiful sight. That's all I got to say. Okay, let's go with this. Constitutional Camp. You had it on. You had it last year for the first time?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so go ahead and tell folks what Constitutional Camp is, and just go ahead and give them the overview of it.
Okay, so Constitution Camp is a week-long VBS-style camp in which we focus on the Constitution, of course, but more importantly, we focus on the philosophies and the ideals that shaped our founding documents, including, of course, the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights.
And that, where are you going to have it this year?
We're going to have it at Geyer Springs First Baptist Church,
Okay.
July 25th through the 29th, 9 a.m. to noon.
Okay. And website or anything that they can go check it out on?
SaleneCountyRepublicanWomen.com. And go to the events page, and you can register there and find more information.
And we're kind of going to go through the mechanics here, and then we'll do it at the end of the program. SaleneCountyRepublicanWomen.com. And as far as which you've upgraded, because last year where you had it, you were a little confined on, geographic abilities. You're stepping it up a notch. You're moving out there to Geyer Springs. You're expecting a bigger crowd this year than last year?
We are. So last year, we had about 3 weeks to put this together. It took us a while to find a venue. And once we located one, we were approaching the end of summer. So that's why we had a very short time frame to put it together. But we found a great venue, but we had over 70 kids in just that very short amount of time. And so, and since then, I have had so many people reach out to me saying that they want to come back. I've had people as far away as California asking me how I did it, and wanting more details. So we have a lot of interest. And so that's why we decided that we needed a bigger venue.
Sure. Is there a total number that you're going to kind of put a lid on or put a cap on?
We're going to cap it at 100.
Cap it at 100. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, because I know last year, and I mean it's a full morning with all the activities because I was by there a couple times last year and it was a full activity and of course kids are high energy and that's great and good and just all the guest speakers you had coming in and also the way you challenged the kids and what they walked out of there learning by the end of the week. So let's just say that somebody comes on Monday by the end of the week. Give some specifics as far as what the kids are going to know or what they will have been exposed to.
Okay. So the first day, we talk about where our rights come from. We impress upon the kids that our rights come from God, not the government. America is unique in that it was the first country in the history of the world to identify this. This is a concept originally inspired by Thomas Hobbes. The concept of natural rights. We are born with these rights and they come from God. And so the kids learn about that from the first day because everything else builds upon that. And so throughout the week, they learn that the Constitution does not give us our rights. We often hear the phrase, well, I have my constitutional right. That's not accurate. You have a God-given right, and the Constitution is a restraint on the government. And so the kids learn about that. They learn about the Bill of Rights. We have a lot of great speakers, as you mentioned. You were one of them. They come in and talk to the kids, and I think this year we are planning on diving into some of the arguments between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. So we may be exploring that as well. But by the end of the week, the kids. Over 70 kids had memorized the preamble to the Constitution. So they'll know that. They'll understand the concept of natural rights, a social contract, a tripartite system of government, and the importance of checks and balances.
Talk about natural rights. I mean, that was one of the things they were pounding on the new Supreme Court justice about, she wouldn't take a position on natural rights if I remembered it right, and how important natural rights are. Mm-hmm. Explain a little bit, just for those that may not understand the concept or the teaching of natural rights, what it is.
So natural rights are that you have them as a person. You have these God-given rights. They come from God. The government cannot take them away. The Bill of Rights specifically, was designed to enforce those rights. And the Anti-Federalists were very clear in that they wanted an extra layer of protection, if you will. And that's why we have the Bill of Rights to just further protect those natural rights that we are given from God.
And as you're sitting there talking, and I'm kind of, watching what's gone on this past week in the news with them wanting to crack down on the freedom of speech, as far as cracking down on defending the freedom of speech and the limitations that the current administration, Joe Biden's administration, is wanting to put. And I think, if I'm Satan, I want to destroy the church, but I also want to destroy the governments that are built upon the foundations of God's principles. And I think that's why America is under attack for one reason. We're imploding from the inside out because we're leaving God and we're leaving everything that God gave to us to get this nation started. And when you talk about the things, such as natural rights, well, if I'm on the other side, if I'm not thinking the way God thinks, I want to get rid of God because then I can replace God with government. And that's exactly the direction that we're going, I think. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes it so dangerous. So if we can get the young minds and get instilled in them, what the truth is, hopefully as they grow up, and unfortunately as they go out and they have to deal with college and adulthood, hopefully we've got some little constitutional missionaries out there that are out defending our freedom. So
right.
Now, didn't I hear one of you girls recite the preamble to the Constitution, or am I imagining that?
Well, yes. Now, Victoria recited the Gettysburg Address at a Christmas party that the Saline County Republican women hosted. Yeah. Yep. But yes, they both know the preamble to the Constitution.
Sweet. Y'all want to recite any of it?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, pull that mic a little closer. Let's give the people a real treat. And why don't you go ahead and go with it?
We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America.
That is, y'all applaud. Thank you very much. There you go. That is great. So that's an example of what the kids would learn at the Constitution camp.
Yes, and we are going to have a lot of return kids, and so we're thinking about maybe adding something and building
Okay.
on top of it. Now, also as an incentive for the kids to learn the preamble, among other things, we have what's called Constitution Store, and Gia might be a good person to tell us a little bit about that. If
All
you
right.
like.
You want to take it and tell us about it?
Yes, sir. So, the Constitution Store is like the store after the Constitution camp, and then you get to pick like mochis and other toys at the end, but it's like at the very last day. At the end, that's when you're not coming back until next year. And that is
Do you get something like stars?
you get stars on your like little name tag,
Sweet.
and then like then the stars help you remember how much points you get.
Right. How many points do you get for memorizing the preamble?
I think you get one.
Okay, I think you got 5. You get 5 if you memorize the preamble, and then if you remember specific things throughout the week, you get 1. Yes.
That
You
is
had
cool.
A lot of stars,
Cool.
right?
I
Yes.
only got like 5 or 6.
We'll have to work on that, won't we? Somebody's getting a little stingy with the stars. Maybe we need to work on the person giving out the stars. You think so?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Hey.
Hey. You got to earn it. This is a camp about you got to earn it. This is not like, free government kind of stuff.
Right.
So that's cool. So you'll get to go to the store at the end of the week, and based upon how hard you work, you actually get rewarded by getting to pick out what you want. Is that it?
Yes, sir.
I think there's an underlying thought process in that about this is not welfare camp. This is Constitution camp.
It's a meritocracy.
There you go. There you go. All right. So you talked about other people calling you from California. Have you had any other states that have wanted to duplicate this, or have you got it in a form to where it could be duplicated in other areas if people wanted to do it
I am working on that. It is a
in your
goal.
spare time? Yeah.
It is definitely a goal because I have had quite a few people ask me about it. There are Constitution camps. I actually got the idea from Mindy McAlinden, who did a half-day camp in Tennessee with some ladies that she knew. There's an overnight camp, I think, in Boston. But to my knowledge, we're the only one that does a VBS-style week-long half-day camp. And so, yes, my goal is to put it into like a manual format and just give it to whoever wants it, and then we'll run with it because we've gotten great feedback. The kids had a lot of fun. We try to incorporate a lot of fun into the learning experience, and it worked out well, I think.
I remember when I was there last year and, came into the sanctuary of the church where you had it, the energy level of the kids. And what's the age groups again?
2nd grade through 9th grade.
Okay. And that's the one thing I noticed that age didn't really become a barrier. I mean, they were all engaged and interactive and participating. And it wasn't like anybody was being made to be there. They wanted to be there, and they were like little sponges soaking it all up and learning it. I'm just curious as far as what they learned at the Constitution camp versus maybe what they learned in other educational settings. Were you surprised by how little they did know as the week developed and you had a chance to work with the kids and then what they knew by the end of the week?
Yes, and the feedback that I got from the parents was, of course, the most important thing. They were the parents seemed to be very impressed with what we were able to impart on the kids in such a short amount of time. But like I said, we try to incorporate it in a fun, engaging way. So, for example, the first day we talk about Thomas Hobbes, who introduced the natural rights concept, social contract. But Hobbes also talked about Leviathan, and he compared Leviathan, which is a biblical historic dinosaur. It's mentioned the first time in the Bible. To the government. And so we had a inflatable dinosaur, which is one of the girls' gymnastics coaches. She dressed up in this inflatable dinosaur, with the short arms. And she would come in, and the kids loved that. So these concepts were presented in a fun and in a way that I think the kids
Embraced it.
Right, and they still remember it. They will remember that Leviathan is the dinosaur, and we had the dinosaur come in with one of those foam swords and just knock things down and kind of just be destructive, as most big governments are.
That's right.
So-
That's why we want to keep the dinosaur small so that we can
Right.
control it instead of it controlling us.
Exactly.
All right, let's talk about a couple other things, because if you're going to be teaching a constitutional camp, I think it's important to know the mindset of the leaders and the people that are putting something like this together. So, from your perspective, because I know you're very engaged, especially in the Republican Party, but you're also engaged in the legal field. Your husband, I've had him on the show before, working on the Wisconsin situation up there. So, just talk for a minute from your perspective about what you feel are maybe some of the biggest threats that we are being faced with, as far as let's take it at maybe at the state level and then at the national level. Anything in particular that just jumps off your mind? I mean, I watched yesterday, regarding Joe Biden, and as far as they they are defending the freedom of speech crackdown by the White House, and then you got Elon Musk, who's out there trying to buy Twitter. Maybe already bought it by now. I'm not sure. And to try to open it up a little bit. So, just what are your thoughts, being as engaged as you are with some of the things that we're facing here at the state, or maybe that we're facing on the national level, that you think are maybe a direct threat to the upcoming generation?
Well, I would say the first thing is going to be the moral decay of our society. That's ultimately where the problem lies. Our system of government is such that the people rule, and the elected officials are represented by us. And if we don't hold them accountable, if we're not engaged, and if we're not if they believe that certain actions will be approved by the people, then they're voting accordingly. And it's the moral decay, the decline of the family, and people, I think, either being too busy or just being apathetic about our government system. So ultimately, while we like to say, well, the problem is with this representative or this politician or this, the problem, and I'm probably going to get heat for this, but the problem is the people. We need to become more engaged, and we need to be holding our representatives accountable. And I am very encouraged to see that people are becoming more engaged, and they are fighting back. But as far as, I guess, in addition to that, on a national level, it is just the gross overreach. And there does seem to be this thought that our rights come from the government. And that seems to be the prevailing thought among many people. And until we realize that, no, our rights come from God, I think we're going to continue to see this decline.
The idea that our rights come from God goes back, and some would even argue this. That's the resistance that was shown whenever it was that we ran the bill to get the Ten Commandments placed on the Capitol grounds. The growing resentment, and you even take a look at the increasing acts of violence and crime against the Jewish folks, which directly affiliate with God. There seems to be, and I think you could expect this, with the return of Christ coming near, that as the return of Christ comes, that we can expect the intensity of it to come up a notch, and that if we are a nation that is built on the principles that God has given us, all the things that we've talked about today, it would only stand to reason that there would be those who would want to come after us in order to, take God out of the picture. Before the Supreme Court, for example, right now, the coach that prayed down the field, pray to God that the Supreme Court sees spiritual wisdom. And, we pray about people having wisdom. I want people to have spiritual wisdom, that they can make discernment, make decisions, understanding that we're here because God lets us be here, not just because we've chosen to be here.
That's right.
Any thoughts?
Well, I think it was John Adams that said that our system of government was designed for a moral people. And it is absolutely true. And I agree that our wisdom and discernment and American exceptionalism itself is based upon our belief and faith in God. And, my daughters and I have talked about how even though we have the right to free speech, the government is not supposed to tell us what we can say or what anyone can say, and that people have the right to say something that's hurtful. But God tells us we're not supposed to say hurtful things. We're supposed to speak truth and love, though. So
let me ask you, as a mom and as somebody that's as actively engaged as you are, if free speech just got opened up on the social media airways where there were no limitations, it was just the wide open range. What are your thoughts as far as curtailing any of that, or do you think that is just the the price of liberty, that you have to just let it flow. And then we who maybe have influence or that can impress upon people the need to be mature or spiritual in their thoughts as far as what they say. Because once we open this thing up and it's wide open, there is no toning it down. Or what do you think?
Well, I do agree. I will always err on the side of liberty, though. And I do think there is a certain responsibility for Christians to push back. Now, does that necessarily mean that there should be some kind of governmental interference? Maybe not necessarily, but we do have power through the power of, or we do have influence through the power of boycotts, speaking out. So many of us are silent. So when I say us Christians, I'll talk to people and they'll say, "Oh, well, I don't want to be called this, or I don't want to be attacked this way." Well, we have to push back. We're called to push back, and as Christians, we're going to be persecuted. My daughters were studying John the Baptist this morning, and an excellent man. He lost his head. He was certainly persecuted. And we just have to be willing to make those kind of sacrifices. But just to answer your question, I would say I will always err on the side of no government interference, but Christians to be actively engaged and push back themselves in the manner in which they can.
Well, and I've said this before, I'll say it again. I think that the church has relaxed and let the government step up and do its job in a lot of areas. And as a result of it, we're seeing the consequences of that decision. Mm-hmm. One of those is that if the Christian nation, we'll call it, would take a stand mm-hmm. in critical areas, we can push back on some of the stuff, maybe to the point. And I think you see that playing out in certain political leaders around the nation as they're starting to push back against the woke society and woke businesses, a lot of which is associated with those that are attacking the very things we're talking about today. And I think it's starting to have an effect. I think I agree with you that if we are not willing to speak up, and we are going to be passive, then we have to take the consequences of our actions of silence, and we get what we're dealt. Mm-hmm. And I think we've kind of let it slip a little bit over the last, say 10, 20 years, mm-hmm. To where now we're starting to wake up and realize it. How much of it can we gain back? How much of it can we push back? Time will tell. But, if we remain silent, then we, we've gotten exactly what we deserve, and that is an overreaching government.
Right. Silence is complicity, in my opinion. We have to speak up. God has given us a spirit of boldness. Not a spirit of fear. We are mm-hmm. supposed to be bold. We're supposed to be courageous, and we're supposed to speak truth and love. And people will be offended by it, just as people were offended by Jesus Christ when he spoke and the apostles when they spoke. And you just need to be prepared for that. But ultimately, the goal should be to bring glory to the kingdom.
And I think that's where, you take certain certain colleges that if you want to send your kids to those colleges, and I don't think we need to retreat from going out to secular colleges. I think we need to do a better job of training our kids to be prepared for what they're going to get when they go out there. Mm-hmm. But just like the other side has played the long game, I think we need to play the long game. We need to be strategically planning. And that's one thing a Constitution camp can do is you're putting in the minds of young people what they need in order to be able to go out there and debate and hold their line, hold the line and be able to defend what God has given us. I think over the last 10 to 20 years, we probably have succeeded in doing that. Not that we have surrendered, maybe a better choice word, that we have surrendered in doing that. And I think some of us are waking up and realizing we got to play catch up here.
Right. We need to be on offense. We've been on defense way too long.
Way too long. We need to carry the ball.
Yes.
That's right. And I think we're starting to see that. All right, so I got about 4 minutes left. So let's go back to Constitution Camp to wrap it up. It's going to be July 25th through the 29th. That's going to be from 9 to noon, and it's going to be held out at Geyer Springs Baptist Church.
Yes.
Okay. And it's being hosted by the Saline County Republican Women's Group.
Right.
But the website is SalineCountyRepublicanWomen.com.
Yes.
Okay. And it's for second grade through
ninth grade.
Ninth grade. All right. And what's the cost of it?
$35.
Okay, $35. Well, that's a deal right there. I mean, you get the store at the end of it. My gosh, I might even come to that, pay for it, so I can get my stars maybe. And you're going to cap it at 100 total.
Right.
Okay. You anticipate being booked up by when? You got any indicators so people need to kind of get it done and not procrastinate on this thing?
I think we will be booked up by July 1st, if not before.
Okay. All right. All right. Anything else you want to say about it, or anything else you want to get out?
Well, I would like to say that on the last day, we go to the Capitol. We have a tour, guided tour, and then we go back to the church, and we're going to have inflatables, a snow cone truck, balloons, games. It's going to be like a carnival, so a celebration, and of course, Constitution Store, and we have things from little mini drones for the kids, fidgets, all the popular things.
All
So
the
it's
fun
a
stuff.
big celebration at the end. And the kid. Oh, I would also like to say that the kids also get to meet some really interesting people like yourself. We had Arkansas Supreme Court Justice Barbara Webb, Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin, a representative from John Thurston's office, our Secretary of State. So a lot of neat people.
Good people that hopefully you will be one day, right? You got the tour all set up at the Capitol already? You need help getting that set up while I'm thinking about
I would welcome your help.
it. Okay, I'll help you get that set up.
Thank you.
And all right, I think that's about all I got to say about it. There was one other thing. The problem of doing live radio is when you forget what you're going to say, people have to be patient with your way. Try to remember it. At the end of the camp, when you come up to the Capitol, they'll get the full blown tour of the Capitol.
Right.
Okay, good deal. All right, I'll help you get that set up. Oh, I know what it was. Sponsors. Do you need sponsors?
Yes, we do need sponsors.
That's it. Okay, money.
Glad you
okay.
brought that up. Yes.
All right. So what do you if they want to help sponsor, if somebody wants to help sponsor it, just reach out to you through that website I gave a minute ago, or how do you want to get them to you?
The website is perfect. We should have a form up. If not already, it will be up soon. There will be different sponsorship levels. And if anybody has any questions today, they can contact me directly through that website.
Okay. This is Jennifer Lancaster. Got her two beautiful daughters with her today. And that's about the Constitution Camp, going to be held on July 25th through the 29th, 9 to 12. I was there last year. I can put my personal endorsement on it. If you want your kids to know about their natural rights, about the Bill of Rights, about their God-given rights as it relates to government, this is an excellent camp for you to go to, and it's designed perfectly for 9 to noon in the morning, and it'll be hosted at Geyer Springs Baptist Church. But contact them through SalineCountyRepublicanWomen.com and get all your information about that. Thanks for joining me here on the Kim Hammer Show today. Hope that you've been better educated because of it. Hope that you've been blessed because of what you heard today. Look forward to having you back next week. Everything works out. We're going to have an hour segment on crime. I've got some special guests coming in that know all about crime and talk about the future and what we need to be doing to address the growing crime in the state, but also look at what they're doing around the nation that's successful and that's failing. That'll be our program for next week. So you'll be back next week on Saturday here on 101.1 FM The Answer. Remember, you always go up to the website, which is thekimhammershow.com, to get the podcast or a replay of today's program. Thank you. Have a great Saturday.